What's up, everybody? Welcome back, and thank you for joining. We are talking about some more Smite. We're going to actually be talking about, I don't know which order this one's going to go up. We're talking about the changes to Smite in Season 9 per class. Right now, we're going to be going over the Hunters. We're going to be going over some of the changes to the builds and the items themselves, most importantly, and then subsequently, we're going to go over some of the changes to the gods. First off, I want to mention that Apollo had a retexture, a remodel. Looks so much better. It looks great. Really glad for that. And his items, the items and changes are going to kind of bring him up to speed a little bit too. First off, going into the god changes. Some of the god changes we have very short list for the hunters. Cernunos is getting a slight buff with his bramble bush. Is going to be also adding a cripple now with the slow, so that's changed a little bit. Uller is getting a huge buff, but in the form of item changes, and we're gonna be going over that more. I just want to mention that real quick. So I'm really glad to see him coming back. Chernobog is getting a huge buff. I think it's like 5% damage increase on his crystal. Very minimal, but it's a buff. It's cool to see him get something because he is not very relevant all the time. He's played a little bit, but I don't know. Heimdall is also getting a damage reduction. He's getting a nerf, and it's basically his crit damage is being reduced a little bit. Not huge, but it's a little bit interesting. Going over the items, and I'm going to want to go over the builds here real quick. Some of the changes we're seeing, some with the bows, some with some crit items, some huge crit mechanic changes as well. The algorithm's been changed, so it's going to be less likely to get a string of normal hits that are not hitting crits, and also less likely to get a string of crits hitting subsequently, doing a ton of damage. So it's going to be a little bit more RNG based, but purposely RNG. A little weird. Pretty big implications on that one. In terms of items, the big one that everybody wants to know that I've been thinking about a lot, and hopefully I get some cool comments on suggestions. Iqbal was a huge item for first go, for first item for Clash, for Arena Assault, whatever I was playing as a hunter, or subsequently a Bloodforge sometimes. Just a huge chunk of power right then and there is a big power spike that was offered. I think Iqbal is still going to be pretty strong. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the best in comparison to some other items, which is actually going to be Atalanta's bow. It's got a huge buff here. It's got a nice wide spread of perks to it. It's got some lifesteal now. It also has some 20% crit chance. It's a great item all overall. I think with all of that together, first item, it's probably going to be the way I'm going to go. Iqbal is still a good item. If you want to, it's going to give more power for sure if it's what you want, but Atalanta is going to be hard to beat in terms of a first item at least. And also its passive is pretty good as well. So I'm thinking first item, Atalanta is going to take it. Iqbal is still going to be having its place if you want. I think it's still a great item, especially with Silver Branch, which is getting a huge, or has a huge buff to it. Getting 10% extra pen, which is going to be pretty huge because the glyph items that we're going to be talking about in a later video on the Guardian side, they're getting even stronger. So we have some glyph items for the hunters as well, which is neat. But I think Silver Branch is going to make a great last item, but we'll get more on that. Don't want to get kicked here for being idle. Atalanta is definitely going to be first item. I think for boxing, you could go the Iqbal if you want to. It's going to be interchangeable, up to you. Second off, for lifesteal, one of the pinnacle points of hunters, Bloodforge was huge for me. Especially with that shield, it was super powerful early game. If you could snag a kill and have a couple extra 100 health, pretty much in that form of that shield. Low longer, is it really going to be needed? They're going to have a couple other options that we're going to go over. I think it's going to be great for assassins though. Devil Gloves or Devourer's Gauntlets, to be a little more formal. Huge buff. Overall power was increased from 65 to 70 or 60 to 70. I can't quite remember. On top of that, the amount of stacks needed to stack it fully has been decreased by 20 whole stacks from 70 to 50. This is very, very potent of a buff. Not only that, each stack itself gives more power, which relates to that overall power increase. So altogether, it's going to have a really crazy implication. Item stack, boom, on how much we're getting. We're getting 70 power and 30% lifesteal. Pretty huge. I think that's going to be a pivotal point for pretty much every hunter build now. Going past that, we want to go into the main meat of the hunters, aside from lifesteal, which is crit. Crit on top of attack speed, which you already have some crit chance here in this first item, 20% to be exact, which is awesome. Poison Star was removed. It's going to come back. Don't get too sad. Wind Demon is staying the same. That's not really that important. Shadow Steel is getting a huge buff. Not only are the general stats of the Shadow Steel Shuriken being increased, the passive is getting a huge increase in its effectiveness from 6 seconds for anti-heal to 10 seconds of that anti-heal. Big item. Gonna recommend, especially if you're boxing anybody, having a healer on the other team, a tanky guardian with Stone of Gaia. Shadow Steel Shuriken is going to be a lifesaver for any of these guys, for any of these hunters playing out here. Wind Demon, I just don't see its effectiveness now with all these other items, so it's going to go on the back burner for now. Just a non-meta item right now is what I'm thinking. Rage, loved Rage. I used to use it all the time. Malice has been removed. It's coming back in a different form. We'll talk over that as well. Rage, I just don't see its effectiveness now with needing all of that crit, especially with the 20% we're getting from Atalanta's now, but you still could go it if you really needed to shred some stuff. I don't know. It did get an overall power increase from 30 to 35, which is pretty neat. Deathbringer is one of the big ones. We're going to a decrease in 3,000 gold to 2,900 gold, but an increase of 600 gold to get to one of the glyph items. The new glyph items here are Envenomed Deathbringer and Malicious Deathbringer here. Malicious Deathbringer being a play from, porting those, the passive from Malice over to Deathbringer, which is really neat. So it's going to help those ability-based hunters, or if you use your escapes a lot, if you're a Hui player, an Izanami, whatever it be, or just getting those abilities, powerful abilities like those stims up more quickly. It does not work on ultimate abilities, but it's pretty cool. Envenomed Deathbringer. Now, these are expensive items to mention as well. 3,600 gold. Or, I'm sorry, 3,500 gold here. But Envenomed Deathbringer is bringing Poison Star and mating it pretty much with Deathbringer, which is really neat. Now, Deathbringer kind of had a seeding back in Season 8, at least for me, and a lot of other builds I saw playing out there. But overall crit damage has been reduced from 2 times damage to 1.75, so it is going to be making Deathbringer more viable than ever, just to make up for some of that extra damage that we're losing. So Deathbringer is going to be pretty big. I'm thinking maybe second to last item, any of these last 3 spots, depending on how the game's going. If you have the gold, get Deathbringer. Overall power was increased. Overall critical chance, critical strike chance was increased by 5% and 5 power increase. So overall, it's just a great item. Envenomed Deathbringer and Malicious Deathbringer are going to be situational. If you're boxing a lot, I feel like Envenomed Deathbringer is going to play a very powerful role in fighting assassins, warriors, or other hunters. Don't really see it doing a whole lot against a mage or another guardian, but it's really neat to see it, especially with the increase in attack speed or attack based hunters that we're going to be going over in another video. They're getting a huge increase from a glyph item off of a rod, so interesting to see. I think it's going to have a even more pronounced or profound effect on the game, especially when it comes to boxing. But definitely Deathbringer is going to be a core item. Past that, we're going to go back to Silver Branch, which we talked about. I think Silver Branch was still a great item. If you want that attack speed, Oboe hasn't been changed. Oboe's still pretty shrippy. But I think core items here, other than Iqbal, Oboe, and Silver Branch, was that 2 items that I mentioned earlier, Hydra's Lament, or yeah, Hydra's Lament, I apologize, has had a cool increase in its physical penetration, up by 10%, which is pretty nice. It's going to make those ability hunters or those hunters that utilize a stun or what, however, especially even assassins that can initiate off that ability, it's going to make them more viable and do a little more damage, especially against gods that are not squishy. Really cool to see. I think Hydra is going to have a place as well. And we're going to go back to Jotuns, which has a huge change. Jotuns is one of those other glyph items that have been added. We have Jotun's Ferocity and we have Jotun's Vigor. Each one of these is going to have different implications depending on how you play and what you're needing in that game, but it's just needed to note that these are an option, especially late game when you have an exuberant, just an excess of gold. Jotuns is going to be key, especially one of these upgraded versions, to get an edge over the other guy that may not be looking at it. Doesn't add any attack speed or anything, but it's a huge chunk of power. It's a bunch of pen. It's just a great item, and it's going to have a lot of increases into your kit. So we're going to add just one of the elements of Jotuns here. Say you need that CDR, that cooldown reduction, whatever you need. In terms of lifesteal, we already have that covered. We have a lot of crit covered. Ending this build, I'm going to recommend Silver Branch Bow. Silver Branch Bow was extremely popular in Season 8. I think it's still getting there in Season 9. It's still getting all the attention that it needs. It's going to be just a great item overall, especially if you're playing a god with a stim like Artemis, Chernobog, Apollo. Even with his passive, Izanami is a huge user of Silver Branch. She utilizes so well that burst of power that you're going to get from on top of your stim attack speed is just going to be crazy. Now, if you're already overcapping your guy, you're not getting any excess attack speed, but you might as well get some power from it. So going to be huge items for you. Now, that Jotun's you're not always going to use, so you can always swap that out depending if you needed something else like extra attack speed to get there. Obviously, we're not at that full attack speed. I would probably recommend getting into Iqval if you wanted to. Now, with that crit chance, Deathbringer is going to be fantastic. I'm going to usually recommend it. Now, with that said, I don't recommend going too many glyph items because they are so expensive unless you just have it and you think you can utilize it. But if you notice with this build, we're lacking in attack speed still to get over to that overclocked portion for Silver Branch. Shogun's Curacy is going to, or Kusari is going to be a major player for your support, our major item for your support to assist you if you are doing the most damage or doing that damage. You can still always go Aussie instead of Devil Gloves. That's going to be up to you. You can alter the build. This is what I think I'm going to be playing as, and checking this out against these Gozbots and in a couple Slash games I've been playing, it is a relatively comfortable attack speed. So it's comfortable for me. It's what's working for me as of right now. I think you can do some different changes, change some things around, maybe swap Deathbringers for Wind Demon if you want for some more attack speed, and that's going to give you even closer to that max attack speed, but also maintaining still great crit, still great damage, and also getting utilizing a cheaper item too, because Deathbringer is quite expensive. So you have some options to mull over, and hopefully this video helped. I hope you guys give me your guys' input, and I'll see you guys out there. Thanks for watching.